What's up? This Big Sherm yet again, and we're continuing rap writing for aspiring MCs. Today we are talking about the continuation of today. We are talking about themes and topics. So, you know how to count bars. You can count 16 bars, right? And you learn some tricks on how to rhyme. So none of those are problems to you. You can count bars and rhyme. Maybe you put something together. Maybe you haven't yet. But so now we want to talk about what are we writing about. A lot of rap is just about anything. It's a lot of braggadocious stuff. Just talking about things that you have. A lot of it's material things. So obviously you can always talk about that stuff, but I think you already know that. So we're going to talk about what other kinds of things you can write about, or how to decide what to start writing. Because a lot of people look at a blank page and go, well, "I don't know what to write about." One way I showed you in the first video with the bars is kind of using the first thing that pops in your head and running from there. But so we're talking about themes and topics. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how you can use those to make greater songs. Um, there's a lot of things to write about. I know that sounds easy, but things you can write about, obviously like love, loss, money, struggle, hardships. So let's run with that one for a second. Struggle is always a standard concept that everyone goes through. So you can just write about your hardships. One thing I like about rap is it's very personal. It's very much about the artists themselves. So if you have any personal struggles or hardships, you can detail those. Don't don't lie in your raps, unless you're telling a story or something, or have a meaning or a purpose. Um, but so you can talk about your struggle and hardships, and so kind of forming that into bars. Um, Maybe you'll create a list of things that you've gone through, or when you're writing something, uh, you could be like, so struggle is our theme right here. So we can say, I struggle real bad, never had a plan, hard times every day, um, didn't know where I was gonna land, um, trouble's always near, I'm trying to steer clear, now I don't have fear, 'cause I know God's here. All right, so there's a little 4 bar rhyme. Hopefully you're counting, about some struggle, and noticed how, and if you have to back up, that's okay, because I don't remember all the words, but I said struggle in the first bar, and hardships in the second bar, and then troubles in the third bar. Um, so I use those to kind of stay on topic. So I think of similar, words or meanings, synonyms of, whatever the concept is, um, to kind of, move it along that way. Um, that's enough of that. So like love, it's another classic example. If you had a heartbreak or something like that that you wanted to write about, if you really wanted to get that off your chest, I know you do. Um, you can talk about, when you first met, and then talk about, everything was so great, and then talk about that's when things changed, and then talk about, she's gone now, and then like talk about, your future. So you can kind of, I like, if I'm telling a story or using a greater theme, I kind of try to break it down first, like what do I want to talk about relating to that. Um, what are the important parts of what I'm trying to say. If you have a strong enough feeling about all of it, um, you might not need to think it out, and it might just come naturally. Then you'll stay on topic. I haven't wrote about like a breakup really or anything. Well, that's not true, of course, but I have songs that are more about like, here are the problems that we're going through. You're like, you hate it when, kind of type raps. So that's just an idea about love. There's a million topics you can Google, topics to write about. And just like the rhymes on things, these aren't things I necessarily do, but when you're just getting started, those crutches can be really helpful and get you on your feet, and then thinking with your own mind about how to advance ideas. But you can, Shakespearean themes. There's a lot of stuff that he wrote about that you can use, but a lot of it doesn't fit to rap. So, uh, one thing I want to talk about is kind of like other kinds of themes. So you're not just like sitting like, oh, what's the theme? Love or money or you know, problems. But you might, a lot of times, especially when you work with a group of artists, the song's theme is a phrase. So someone, you know, you're sitting around, the beat just started playing, you know, people already having the first lines coming in their head, those first words, you know, or like something they're like, you know, I like this. Someone has a phrase. So the phrase might be, I thought I wrote one down, um, but a phrase could be like, um, kicking back. You know, it's like maybe it's a real laid back beat. You know, someone just keeps saying kicking back, da-na-na-na, kicking back, da-na-na, you know, and maybe that ends up becoming the hook. And so you're like, all right, it's a laid back beat. I could do the whole thing about how much I kick back, how much I chill, what we do when we chill, you know, what's a good day for us. So you can kind of use that kicking back. You know, I would use that concept, that phrase in the hook, and then start writing rhymes around that for your verse. Especially works well, you know, when you're with a group of people, because then it's not so specific. It's not like, you know, break up or, you know, when I struggled in the trap, or something like that. But it's based off a phrase. So like, we had one song that we did that's unreleased, but it's called Worldwide. And so the concept's like just global reach, like worldwide, things like that. Um, Other phrases like, you know, obviously like getting money, you can write a whole song about, I'm sure. Might be a lie for you, I don't know. uh, just kidding. But you could write about like any kind of phrase like new life, you know, new life. So, you know, your hook is like new life, roll the dice. Dun-dun-dun, got to get it right, huh? New life, roll the dice, dun-dun-dun, got to get it right, like new life, no dice, dun-dun-dun, got to get it right. So okay, you got your little hook down, and it's new life. So your bars now you have a concept, you know, just off those words. You just new life popped in your head, and you're like, all right, we can run with that. That's like a concept. So you know, your bars can be talking about like how you messed up, or how you're doing something better now. You can talk about why or how your life is better now. You know, besides new life, you could do like, um, you know, hard work, hard work. Yup. In the yard, got to make it work. Hard work, hard work. Got these bars, need to make them work. Hard work. So I just thought of again hard work. Um, but you can run off of that for your concept. And a lot of those will be pulling off of the beat. You know, if it's a really aggressive beat, you're not going to be like, I'm chilling. Like, you know, you're going to be more aggressive with it. So a lot of it's what the beat makes you think, but you can run with those early words that you can come up with as concepts for that. Um, so I want to go to more like, all right, actually, let me go to metaphoric concepts. Now, these are getting more like advanced in themes, but metaphoric concepts. So, like, you know, um, new day. So you can have a concept of new day, not new life, but new day. And so metaphorically, you know, you could just talk about like literally it's a new day, like oh it's a new day again. But that's not the point of this new day. We want to talk about more conceptual stuff. So like for me with the new day, I think about suns and suns rising. Um, I always I love sun metaphors. Some sun metaphors are easy to grasp at a lot of times. So sun metaphors for new day, you know, and be like I'm shining bright, got to get it right. So took flight. Yep, reaching newer heights. Um, New day. Um, High up like a kite. Um, don't play. Um, just a day in my life. So with New Day, you could say, you know, things about shining or something about the sun. So you can be like, you my son, these rappers' father. Or you could be like, I'm so hot, you know, why these rappers bother? Um, so you can think of metaphoric ones. So the example I actually had written down, was a joke, but it's tree. You could write a song um, about being a tree metaphorically by using a lot of similar rhymes. And I use this a lot in my styles, where I'll say one thing and kind of mean something else. So literally what I said, you could take it in two ways. But so trees, our concept is trees, and that I'm a tree for our song. We think this is going to be a hot song. It's going to be on the radio. It's called I'm a Tree, coming out soon. Um, um, but so like we'll use this example again, like, you know, so your concept is tree. You have a very nature beat, nature sounding beat, pure Michigan sounding beat. You know, metaphorically, you could talk about like you got, you know, you're sticking with your roots. You done some dirt. You got tough skin. You could talk about how you always making green, like money and trees. Obviously, you can talk about like how you always stay planted. You could talk about how you're spreading seeds and ideas. You could talk about, you know, how you're blowing in the wind or you're not blowing in the wind. You could talk about, you know, so old or like, you know, so OG. No one can stop you or something like that. Again, this is kind of, you know, a far-fetched example, but the exaggeration kind of shows you how to do those kinds of those themes where they're more like metaphoric. Um, so I think that covers that, you know, in brief, for now. So let's move on to what's probably our final one, um, story-driven rap. So we kind of touched on it earlier, but so there's a difference between having a theme and a topic. You know, we're talking about the breakup. You know, we kind of had a story, but sometimes you can have a real story. Now, if you're doing this, you might have had something that has specifically happened to you, and you want to tell that story, something that you did or something that happened to you or someone else, and you're like, that's a story you need to tell. So, you know, start writing it. You already know what it is. Um, but other types of stories, you know, made up stories, but stories that serve a purpose. Some of the great storytellers, Rick the Ruler, Nas, Andre 3000, just to name a few, you know, are great storytellers. And, you know, some they tell stories that aren't necessarily real, but they're reflective and representative of real stories. Um, when you're writing a story, I mean, hopefully you have something in mind, unless you're just like, I want to write a story, but I have nothing to write a story about. Um, you know, you kind of want to break it down into like a timeline, kind of like you would for filming. You know, you want to separate the ideas or points you want to hit across. You know, what's the beginning? What's the end? What's the middle? You know, what's the rise? What's the fall? You know, you're going to want to just stay on topic every line when you're trying to write a story or a theme, but especially a story. You can't stray from the story or else people will be confused when you just start saying random words like, you know, other raps that you're doing. So I want to show, for example, this is not like, this is kind of a story. This is kind of a story. So uh, this is Rapa Nui, which is a song I wrote about Easter Island, and it's based off this book I have. And so in this book, I kind of outlined, you know, their journey. They arrived to the island on a ship, and you know, got greeted by all the people. The people kept on wanting to trade stuff with them, like cigarettes for like, you know, wooden sculptures and stuff. You know, they had celebrated for successfully making it without any, you know, buddy passing or anything like that. And then they started searching, you know, for the statues and, you know, learning more about the culture. So at the beginning, you know, the first verse in the song kind of outlines that. And it goes, Dr. Hangaroa slowly dropped the anchor lower, traversed across the ocean. Day and night feel like I'm Noah. Village people show up, natives want to start to trading. Hard to say no, but tomorrow we start excavating. Our celebration first, once we set up all our tents. At Anukeno, where they say Hotumotua live. Gave them clothes, cigarettes, and all we had to give. They gave us wooden sculptures in return as a gift. Sounds surreal, but this is not a movie. 2,000 miles away from you on Rapa Nui. All right. So that is a story, and it kind of outlines the story that I told, and I kind of took the idea that I want to write, the story that I knew, and kind of outlined like what are the major points that happened, and then wrote about them. And so the end, I said, sounds surreal, but this is not a movie. 2,000 miles away from you on Rapa Nui. So those are bars that are used at the end of both verses. So I don't know if I knew first or decided later on, but I was like, I'm going to end both verses with this tagline. So I wrote those at the end of my page, outlined how many bars, the verses. I don't even know if that might be a 12. I don't remember. Um, but then I worked, I wrote those and then kind of started back at the top and found my way to the end of that. So that's a good way to do it, is kind of like have an ending in place, or a beginning in the middle, because you have a story you want to tell. If, again, listen to like Nas. He tells a lot of crazy like gangster stories. Some of them real and some of them, aren't and are, more for a purpose. But you can kind of hear how he lays it out. And a lot of rap is stream of consciousness stuff. So it's you coming up with things and kind of just being gifted it. Don't struggle too hard. It's hard, you learn stuff. It comes easier for others, and comes easier for some rather than others. But you can keep working on it and try not to push it too far, and just kind of use the feeling, use the vibes, to kind of take you along. Your rhyme. Just like kind of a last point, you don't always need themes, but having those basic themes like a phrase or something or whatever the hook is, guide you. It lets you kind of reach out and come back to the theme. I always try to sometimes I'll stray from the theme, but then when I stray, the next line I'll put something directly back related to my theme or my phrase. In it, so it just kind of stays on point and is able to like breathe a little bit and not so rigidly like I'm telling a story right now, and it's kind of like this is about this thing. Like Star Wars could be a phrase, and they could be talking about like um whatever, like I need my space higher than the moon, um you know um riding on your rocket ship to greatness, or whatever. um Cool. So yeah, kind of just in that regards, it's how specific do you want your theme or your song to go. Some songs, just by feeling it, you'll know that it doesn't really require much, and some you'll be like, this needs something to write about. So kind of think of how specific. You want to talk about being a tree, or like a forest. Um, do you want to talk about a specific breakup, or just about like not loving. You want to talk about an instance where you made money or just making money. So you can kind of break it down to different levels, and you can use your multiple verses to express different parts of the same idea. So you could have a more specific verse and a more open verse, and then you can kind of decide which one goes where. Should you decide? But anyway, thank you for tuning in. Hopefully this has been helpful. If you do have any questions or comments, leave them in the comments, and I think that's all I have for you today. So we're going to continue on with these lessons. The next one will be about arranging your songs. Thank you for tuning in. Let me know if you have any questions or if anything you'd like me to talk about specifically, and we will be